I would absolutely want the most severe penalty that could be brought. Patsy? Yes, really.
Now, that is the most emotional I think I've ever seen Patsy, certainly on camera. What reduced Patsy to tears here? And I must say, just for the record, I believe Patsy's innocent. I don't think Patsy killed JonBenet. So why do you think she's triggered to tears at this point? As early as February 16, 1997, less than 2 months after the incident, JonBenet's doctors first went public with a major announcement. It was this that was published in the Daily Camera. JonBenet's doctor rules out abuse. Victim, that's JonBenet, had no history of SA, pediatrician says. On March 16, less than a month later, Dr. Beuf reiterated his message. Ramsey doctors, no history of abuse. Now, part of the reason why attention was turning to Dr. Beuf, JonBenet's doctor, was because over time, certain elements from the autopsy were being revealed, such as this in February. Let's go to the Daily Camera. Boulder District Judge Carol Glowinski opened portions of the girl's autopsy report to the public on Friday, although several media organizations argued the entire document should be in the public record. So portions of the autopsy were being withheld, while other portions were being made public. Glowinski sealed parts of the report for 90 days or until authorities arrest a suspect. So it's these portions of the autopsy that had been released were leading to speculations, including from Dr. Cyril Wecht, an expert witness in the O.J. Simpson case. Let's go back to the Daily Camera. The release sections of the document did not include a time of death or details of the significant forensic evidence, but the report did indicate that the girl suffered severe head injuries and abrasions on the left of her lower back and leg. It also goes on to note certain sections revealed chronic inflammation and epithelial erosion or tissue damage, the report says. And so it's in this area that Cyril Wecht, a doctor and a lawyer, and he'd given expert testimony in the murder of Robert Kennedy and Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. That's the O.J. Simpson case. He said, to me, those wounds are evidence of SA. And Dr. Cyril Wecht would later be slapped with I think it was $150 million lawsuit in the same year that CBS was sued. And so he went on to say, chronic inflammation means it's more than a few days old, and the erosion suggests something older, some type of instrumentality that was rubbed against the wall and caused it to erode.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. Now, like so many things in the Ramsey case, could this chronic inflammation be one thing or something else? Is it even chronic inflammation? There's so many things in the Ramsey case that can be interpreted in more than one way. Was the ransom note written by Patsy or someone else? Did a family member kill JonBenet or a stranger? Were the marks a railway track or a stun gun? Did the flashlight belong to the Ramseys or was it left behind by a police officer? Ditto the high-tech shoe print. Did JonBenet eat pineapple or something else? Did she wet the bed or did she not even go to bed that night? In February 1997, early speculation and rumors seemed to be implicating John more than Patsy. Remember, at this early stage, details of the autopsy had emerged, but only certain details, while the ransom note was still under wraps. Also, did the public know at this early stage about red fibers on the sticky side of the duct tape and what Patsy was wearing that night and that she didn't change her clothing? And did they know that the murder weapon was constructed out of materials found in Patsy's paint tote? In fact, one of Patsy's own paintbrushes. And did they know about the hair found on the white blanket, which would in the beginning seem to implicate Patsy? If the cops thought their dirt was on John, they felt they'd get it from John's ex-wife, Lucinda. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, I'll be following up this analysis later today with some more. I'm still putting together a script where we'll deal with the questions around that evidence in the O.J. Simpson case. Why didn't Jill Shively testify? How did the defense deal with that second glove found at Rockingham? Why wasn't certain evidence collected? So really interesting, really fascinating. So look out for that later today. If you find this analysis worthwhile, please hit the thanks button and let's get started. So this is from the same Daily Camera article from March 1997. So they're dealing with the autopsy, and in regard to that, there are other developments taking place. And so they say, police interviewed Lucinda Ramsey Johnson, John Ramsey's former wife and mother of 2 of his children, as well as other Ramsey family members and friends in Georgia. McNeil would not disclose the Georgia residents police have questioned. The investigators, will be finished here by the end of the weekend, McNeil said. They'll talk to the people they need to talk to and take the time they need to take to get this done. Now, you can imagine what's going on. The police are in Georgia questioning John's ex-wife, probably questioning his kids as well, in particular Melinda, and wanting to know what kind of father, what kind of husband John was, what were his habits. Is there anything that the police need to know? Sources said that authorities have interviewed Georgia friends about the family's behavior. We also want to talk to people that some family members spent the holidays with. But the police were actually having a difficult time. If you think about the Stantons, in the beginning they said things and then they kind of went silent. In the same way, in Georgia, most people don't want attention from the press like that. Lucinda Johnson has told police her son and daughter, John and Melinda, were at her home in Atlanta and flew to Michigan on December 26th. So that kind of established their alibi as early as March 1997. Now, what I find crazy is 28 years later, you still have people saying, have they looked into JonBenet's older brother, John Andrew? Having an alibi is one of the most basic questions in true crime, in a criminal case. And it's also the question that arises in the O.J. Simpson case. Did he have an alibi, yes or no? It's also interesting that with all of this happening, the speculation around John, the police gravitating to Georgia, to Atlanta, Georgia, to speak to Lucinda. John went there as well, quote, to provide support to his ex-wife and children during the latest interview. It's quite interesting that he felt he needed to be there as well. So at the end of the day, were they able to find any dirt on John? And the answer is no, no such luck. But it is interesting that John tagged along, apparently to give moral support, while the cops questioned Lucinda Johnson. Besides moral support, John also made sure that his ex-wife had a lawyer by her side as well.
I don't know. Maybe they forgot the basic constitutional right, which is the presumption of innocence. Maybe they relied on gossip and materialistic values, chasing the dollar.
As far as I know, that's the only interview Lucinda Johnson's ever given, and that appeared in the Ramsey Apologia JonBenet's America in mid-1998 when they needed all the apologia they could get. Let's go back to the article. Remember, this is the Boulder Daily Camera from March 1997. JonBenet Ramsey's family has provided the district attorneys with a psychiatrist videotaped interview with the girl's 10-year-old brother, a pediatrician's records, that's Dr. Beuf's records, and other information that they contained indicates the family has no history of SA. That's according to a source. The family has made Burke Ramsey's interviews with the psychiatrist who was selected by the Boulder County Department of Social Services, and all of JonBenet's medical records available to the prosecutor. So you can see within the first 2 months of the incident, the gossip that was sort of going around was really centered around this aspect that I can't even say the word on YouTube. And so the attention gravitated, first of all, to John and then in a secondary sense to JonBenet's brother Burke. And of course the Dr. Beuf sort of had some expert knowledge in that area, or certainly some documented knowledge in that area, and we're going to get to him in the next episode. The article also notes they also allowed the pediatrician Dr. Francesco Beuf and his nurses to speak with investigators. Police could not have obtained those things on their own because they don't have subpoena power, said a source. All that was completely voluntary on the part of the family. The Ramsey's investigators have also conducted exhaustive interviews with family members, friends, and people from deep in the past of JonBenet's mother, Patsy. But thus far, they have failed to turn up any evidence of past interference in terms of the murder of the 6-year-old or her mother. So there's even checking to see if there'd been that sort of thing going on with Patsy by a male member of the family. Police have been similarly stymied, according to sources. Now, curiously, with all of this going on, Lucinda being questioned, the family doctor being interviewed, Burke being questioned, the two people that hadn't been properly questioned were the Ramseys themselves.
Do you believe this case will ever be solved?
Solved? No. I think that it can still be, however, probed, and I think that the charges should be brought against both of the Ramseys, and I think that the police should do then what they would do with Mr. and Mrs. Jones and Mr. and Mrs. Smith. You play one against the other, and you move toward the truth. That's what you do.
And that excerpt is from about the 57-minute mark from JonBenet's America. If you go through the rest of this article from the Daily Camera, talks about, that nothing had happened to Burke, and he's probably unaware of anything that happened to his sister. Goes on to look at JonBenet's two half-sisters. Had anything happened to them? Had anything ever happened to Patsy? All the women in the house, all the women in the Ramsey family, what were their experiences? They've gone so far as to query reporters about what they know and exhumed a 5-year-old, it's a strange word to use, dredged up really a 5-year-old autopsy report on Beth Ramsey. Can you believe that? One of the early theories was that if Patsy had suffered some sort of, how do I say the word without not saying the word? If Patsy had experienced this sort of thing, they say it could have created a psychological complex allowing her to deny what had happened to her daughter and even to pen a false ransom note. Consider the overthinking that is taking place there. Again, at this early stage, look at what was coming out in the investigation. Two groups of handwriting experts, one from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, and the others, hired by the Ramsey family, have concluded that John Ramsey did not write the ransom note. So, although they are sort of gravitating towards John in terms of some of these charges, he already seems to be excluded as the writer of the ransom note, and that turned out to be true in the beginning and to the current date. But even then, in March, they said they couldn't exclude the possibility that Patsy Ramsey did write the note. Investigators for the family, however, called that possibility highly unlikely. In other words, not that she was excluded, just unlikely. Interestingly, the media were openly reporting as early as March that the coroner's report indicated JonBenet was essayed prior to being killed, which then led to questions regarding how long this had been going on, and was this the first and only incident or instance. And once again, Wecht weighed in here, saying that he thought something may have happened at least 2 days before her death. Such a great article. Quote, while a coroner's report found JonBenet had been essayed before she was killed, experts have differed widely. It's interesting that they've got experts in inverted commas, as to whether the evidence supports previous or chronic. There you have it. The coroner's report found chronic inflammation and epithelial erosion, leading Dr. Cyril Wecht to conclude that there was something going on at least 2 days before her death. And of course, 2 days before JonBenet's death, someone called 911 during the Ramsey Christmas party. And didn't Susan Stein shoo the officer away from the door? And wasn't JonBenet in tears that day, saying that she didn't feel pretty, amongst other strange going-ons? At this early stage, you had certain doctors, even in this article, saying, you know what, poor hygiene can cause chronic inflammation. And so if there's poor hygiene going on, is there proper care of this little girl going on regardless. And so someone said some little girls can have asymptomatic bladder infections that can cause irritation. At the same time, other experts caution that assay of young children does not necessarily leave evidence easily detected in routine pediatric examinations. What is that angling at? Well, it's angling at the subtlety in terms of this particular evidence. I'm not going to go into more detail into the sensitive area, but it is interesting that certain people, certainly Ramsey apologists such as Paula Woodward, said at CrimeCon that there was some very serious essay did happen on the night JonBenet died. She used the word penetrated, whereas in this article they're saying that that did not happen. Another expert, Dr. Richard Krugman, says, children can experience essay and have perfectly normal exams. Far more important in determining a history of this sort of thing are the child's statements followed by his or her demeanor and behavior. And that's again why Burke stands out and becomes prominent as a vital witness even in this area. Who is in a better position to testify as to whether he himself or his sister might have experienced SA? Who is in a better position to clear his parents, on the other hand? The same article deals with this videotape of Burke Ramsey being significant, and the interview clearly showing that the boy had not experienced certain things and he had no knowledge of any unusual problems with his sister. That's according to a source. Of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and we really do need to examine the statement that Burke gave, especially the one he gave when he was 11 years old, and what the police thought of that statement. Not what sources say and what the Ramsey apologist said. What did independent investigators think of the credibility of Burke's statements? Now, if you're looking for something specific, you tend to see it. But equally, by looking for something specific, one can also miss the less easy to see things, the subtleties. Now, we've dealt briefly with February and March here. April was the month that the Ramseys finally gave their police statements. And on the 1st of May, the Ramseys held a big press conference in Boulder, handpicking all the journalists they wanted in the room. And it was here, at this occasion, that John Ramsey cleared his throat and tried to clear the air once and for all regarding these allegations.
To those of you who may want to ask, let me address very directly, I did not kill my daughter JonBenet. There have also been innuendos that she has been or was sexually molested. I can tell you those were the most hurtful innuendos to us as a family. They are totally false.
Patsy Ramsey also said this.
We would like to think that we don't know anyone that we have ever met in our lives who could do such a thing to a child. But they talked with us and said, please tell us names of people, who may have been in your home at any time. We just outpoured information just as much as we could try to remember.
And that outpouring would implicate Santa Claus, the Whites, the housekeeper, I think the gardener, pretty much everyone.
Which brings us at last to the moment of truth.
Dr. Beuf, what did he say about JonBenet's medical record? What did he say about Golfgate? If certain things weren't in JonBenet's medical record, what was in it?
An arrest must be made for us to go on with some semblance of a life and hope for the future.
Thank you for listening this far, and I'll see you guys next time.